Good afternoon, a good Erev Shabbos. We're coming to Parshas Shmos, the Shabbos. Studying all week Parshas Shmos, the first parsha in the book of Exodus. So I just want to share with you all a little bit. We have where I work as a chaplain. We have a learning program every week with the doctors and the staff, once a week during the lunch break. And we learned this week, I go to usually the website Sefaria.com, and different authors, they put together source material sheets for Shiurim. And sometimes I find by Rabbanan.com from YU, sometimes from Sefaria. I find it to be a good source materials, if you want to have a text-based study, shiur. We brought different midrashim talking about the title. This one is someone, Ms. Jaffe, who put this together. Bracha Jaffe, they said her name was, I don't remember. And she spoke about in the life of Moses, nature versus nurture, the two mothers that Moses had, Yocheved and Bisya Baspara, and bringing different midrashim and Agadah, discussing these issues of Moshe Rabbeinu being raised by Bisya Baspara and also by his mother Yocheved, and what he received in both of those houses, and essentially, what does it mean to be adopted. Brings a Gemara in Megillah, which brings a passage from Divrei Yomim, the Chronicles, in which Bisya, the daughter of Paro, the princess of the Egyptian princess, is called HaYehudiyah. She's called the Jewess. And why is she called a Jewess? Because she abandoned idolatry. And it says that she is the mother of Jared, and it says that that is one of the names of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu had many names, and we call him by the name that he received in the house of Parai, the Egyptian name Moses, because I drew him from the water. I remember in Ezra Academy, Rabbi Friedler used to joke around. He said that you watch the Ten Commandments and you see Paro's daughter. She says, I'll call him Moses from the water. I drew him from the water. From the water I drew him. And he said, if that's the case, you should have called him Drew. But in any event, at the end of this whole discussion of different midrashim, I find it interesting how she chooses to bring this Jaffe. Chooses to bring how Moshe Rabbeinu called his son Gershom, saying that he was a ger. He was a stranger in a strange land. There's lots of discussion these days of this word ger. There's this fellow David Katz who has this neo-ger toshav movement, which is very questionable and kind of weird. Not to say that to be moitzi laws on his students, but this whole idea of changing the semantics of what we call in Klal Yisrael, the derech klal, we use the word ger, we mean a ger tzedek, not a ger tosha. Yeah, sometimes chumash stam a ger is a ger tzedek, and sometimes stam a ger is a ger toshav. You don't have these terms ger tzedek and ger toshav in chumash, but you have them in Chazal and Rishonim and Achronim. but we're not makabel bisman hazeh the ger toshav, because the majority of Klal Yisrael doesn't live in Eretz Yisrael. I often venture to say, and even in Bayesheni we were in makabel ger toshav, ger tzedek they were makabel. But this whole inyan of ger toshav, it's really quite a foolish thing to even be talking about bisman hazeh. And I'm going to put it aside for now, because it's not to say Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach is not necessarily something we should be talking about. Maybe yes, maybe no. Chazal are not very clear about it as to whether or not the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach are noyek bisman hazeh. For sure, if someone is makabel upon themselves the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, they're mechuyev to keep them. There's a question as to whether or not someone, by virtue of just being born a human being who is a ben Noach, whether or not they're mechuyev in the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. For sure, if someone is makabel them, they are mechuyev. But what exactly is going on here? Well, let's put that aside, because really, as one of my friends points out, we should really ask the question as to whether or not we should even be calling the ger tzedek by the name ger. You know, we know that Chazal say ger shabolis gayer, and not nachri shabolis gayer. That the person is the ger as soon as they decide they want to become a ger, and they become a ger tzedek once they convert. You know, actually, what it says is Huki Yisrael L'chol Davar. Once he converts, it doesn't say any longer that he's a ger, but rather that he's a Yisrael L'chol Davar. And the question is, should we be calling he's a Jew? And people also like to argue about semantics. Are we Israelites? Are we Jews? Are we Hebrews? Or this and that. I know a lot of my patients in the mental hospital, they get very obsessed with these semantics of the Hebrew versus the Israelite versus the Jew. Biblically speaking, the question is, who is a Jew? What do we talk about when we say someone? How can you become a Jew? Is it even possible to become a Jew? And I turn them to Scripture, because obviously, if we're talking to someone who comes from a non-Jewish or a non-Torah background, what we bring from Chazal, although it's important to us, might not be important to them. But what's in the Bible, generally, that's important to them. And we have, it says a ger shabolis gayer. I'm saying, we have in Book of Esther, chapter 9, Harvim Armei Aretz B'Syahadim, Ki Nofal Pachad Yehudim Aleihim. It says many of the peoples of the land became Jews because the fear of the Jews fell upon them. There's questions as to whether Misyahadim means that they actually became Gerim, or whether it means that they pretended to be Jewish just to avoid being killed. But the Pshat is that they were Gerim. And it shows that that you can become Jewish from a biblical from a biblical standpoint, that the word Jew does apply to the ger biblically, and the word Jew really applies to all Bnei Israel today, all Israelites today, because ever since the northern and southern kingdom split, you had the Israelim and the Yehudim, meaning the Levites and the Benjamites who lived in the Eretz Yehuda, in the land of Judea, were Jews, were Yehudim. And that's also neither here nor there what to discuss, but it's just something that people like to bring up all the time, and it really doesn't matter all of these discussions of semantics, I think, are big wastes of time. But unfortunately, people are interested in them. People are obsessed with them. They're preoccupied with them, and it's really foolish. It's really a big waste of time. But still, it's worthwhile to get these things out of the way and explain what do these words actually mean. And yes, a ger is a Jew. And yes, a Kohen and a Levi, the priest and the Levite, are also Jews, even if they're not from the tribe of Judah. And and so too all the Jews, the people from the northern kingdom who fled to Judea and to recognize, who they were and so forth. Are also Jews, even if they were from the other tribes. That's why we see Mordechai HaYehudi, Ish Yemini. Mordechai is called a Jew, even though he's a Benjaminite, and so forth. And so too, many of the non-Jews there became Jews. It's just how it is. But I really want to get back to this about Moshe Rabbeinu referring to himself as a ger. And I feel that perhaps this is why he was the one to receive the Torah. Because he was the perennial outsider, is how this Bracha Jaffe explains it. Being bounced back and forth between his birth mother and his adopted mother. And his adopted mother, who loved him and cared for him as if it was her own child. His adopted mother, who raised him. And his adopted mother, who was a monotheist, who was Jewish, even though she was Egyptian. And who the Bible calls the Jewess, even though she was Egyptian. According to how our sages read the Bible. And that's a rather obscure reference, the Book of Chronicles. It's one of the books of the Bible that we very rarely look at all. And yet our sages have tremendous, tremendous things to say from this Book of Chronicles. Yes, we have a little bit in our liturgy from Chronicles. That's about it, It's very, very little, although it's in our daily liturgy. I mean, it's a considerable, chapter, but still, it's mostly just echoing things that we already have in the Psalms. But the Book of Chronicles has a lot of very interesting things. It's just one of the books that we really don't pay that much attention to, and we should. Just because it's not in our liturgy, we should still spend some time looking at it. But that being said, and Art Scroll and Judaica Press and Cicino and others have done wonderful work, to open up these books to us. But it's a difficult world to be, straddling two different worlds, straddling with an identity, having these difficulties with the identity that Moshe Rabbeinu struggled with. Is he a Jew? Is he a Hebrew? Is he an Egyptian? Who is he? He's called an Ish Mitzri by the daughters of Yisro, by Jethro's daughters. He's called an Egyptian man. What is he? Who is he? How is this? And the answer is that this Moshe Rabbeinu, Why was he the one who was picked? It's because he was the Ger Ha'isi Beretz Nachriya, because he was a stranger in a strange land, because he couldn't really fit in. And why is that? So I've taught this over many times, but it's a passage in the Degel Machne Ephraim, who's the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, and who had a telepathic relationship with his grandfather after his father passed away, and has a great deal of channeled literature that he channeled posthumously from his grandfather. Most of the Sefer Degel Machne Ephraim, when he says Shemati Mimoiri, he says, I heard from my master, from Baal Shem Tov. He received this in a supernatural way after his grandfather passed away, because he was a teenager, maybe 12 years old, a young lad. It's hard to imagine that he heard so much that he attributed to Baal Shem Tov as a small child. Oh, it's possible. It's possible that he heard these things in this world, but it's generally understood from Hasidic masters that the Degel channeled this literature from his grandfather. And the Degel, although not everything is channeled from Baal Shem Tov, certain things are his own chidushim and so forth, and so he differentiates between his own chidushei Torah and things that he channeled. But in any event, the Degel Machne Ephraim, he mentioned, so in Psalm 119, King David writes, the psalmist writes, David HaMelech writes, in Tehillim, in Temania Pei, the 8 faces, so how the sages refer to Psalm 119. He says, Ger anoichi ba'aretz al tastem imani mitzvasecha. This is in Parshas Bahar. He says, I'm a stranger in the land, do not hide your commandments from me. What does that mean? It means that David HaMelech recognized that he's a stranger in the world, and God is also a stranger, says the Degel Machne Ephraim. God is in the world, but not of the world. And so too, King David said, God, I'm just like you. I'm in the world, but not of the world. I have a friend. He kept it a secret for a long time that he's a Ger Tzedek and in yeshiva. And the other Geri Tzedek, he told them, but not anybody else. Everybody else he kept a secret. Talmud Chacham, very choshev in German. By Chasna we found out, because Ben Avinu, really was by his word, by the Tanoim, we found it out, but very choshev in German. And we see like this in the Degel Machne Ephraim. He said, the Ger, despite how much we have a mitzvah, v'yahavtim as a Ger, we see people they don't fulfill that mitzvah properly. That's why we need a mitzvah like that. And we really have to work on that. The whole Klal Yisrael has to work on that. But it's always difficult. So the Ger always feels like he's the outsider, because even though he's 100% Jewish, the Jewish community doesn't really treat him or her the way they should be treated. And he's no longer a goy, but he's no longer a Gentile, even though he grew up. So he doesn't really fit in anywhere until he meets a landsman, another ger. Then he can really feel like this is someone I can really relate to. And King David said to God, "You're also a ger in this world. You're also a stranger here. You're in the world, but not of the world. And I am like that too. So you don't have to keep any secrets from me." And that's what it says in Parshas Bahar. You are strangers and residents with me. You're in the world, but not of the world. And so Moshe Rabbeinu, who grew up as this Kiger ha'yisi b'aretz nechriya. I was a stranger in a strange land, in a foreign land, as the outsider, the perennial outsider, as Baruch Jaffe puts it. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu was bedavka, the one who was zeiche to be makabel the Torah, to bring something that is not of the world into the world, to bring something that's totally extraterrestrial, as Rabbi Bart Tzadok always puts it, something that's out of this world. Our holy Torah is out of this world. It's in the world but not of the world, but the world is of it. It's the instruction manual to the world. We pointed out from the Chassam Sofer that a man who was in the world but not of the world, because he didn't fit in any world, was specifically the one who would bring down the Torah to the world. And so, since he's Moshe Rabbeinu, we have to follow in his footsteps as well, and be his students. To learn how to be in the world but not of the world. To learn to be like David HaMelech, who was also a Talmud of Moshe Rabbeinu, like we all are. A man who could say, and that's chuz, being that ger ba'aretz, and being the stranger in the strange land. And God will not hide the mitzvos from us. What's this guy doing here? Alright, I'm just going to have to go in here. Alright. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. And comment for more. And tell me ideas for more videos you're interested in having. And look forward to more discussions. Alright. God bless. Please. All the best. Good Shabbos.